Advanced tempo techniques in song composition. 1. Polyrhythms and tempo shifts. Polyrhythms. Utilize polyrhythms to create complex rhythmic textures. Combining different rhythmic patterns that play against each other can add depth to your composition. For instance, overlaying a 3/4 rhythm on a 4/4 bass can create an intriguing rhythmic interplay. Tempo shifts. Implement tempo shifts within sections to surprise the listener and add complexity. A sudden shift from 120 BPM to 150 BPM, for example, can drastically change the song's energy, making the transition impactful and memorable. 2. Tempo mapping and automation. Detailed tempo mapping. Use detailed tempo maps to control the BPM throughout the song precisely. Modern DAWs allow for intricate tempo automation, enabling you to gradually increase or decrease the tempo over measures rather than making abrupt changes. Dynamic changes. Incorporate gradual tempo changes within sections, e.g., a slight accelerando leading into a chorus. This can be subtle yet effective in building anticipation and energy. Multi-tempo sections. Experiment with layering multiple tempos in different sections. For instance, having a double-time feel in the drums while the melody maintains a slower tempo can create a compelling contrast. Tempo modulation. Transition between tempos seamlessly. For example, modulate from 120 BPM to 140 BPM by using intermediary steps or rhythmic bridges. This technique ensures the change feels natural and maintains the song's flow. 4. Thematic tempo use. Thematic development. Use tempo to enhance thematic elements of your composition. For a narrative song, you might start with a slower tempo to set the scene, gradually increasing as the story progresses to convey rising tension or excitement. Emotional crescendo. Implement a consistent tempo increase or decrease throughout the song to mirror an emotional crescendo or decrescendo. This technique is particularly effective in cinematic and progressive music. 5. Hybrid rhythms and metric modulation. Hybrid rhythms combine different rhythmic feels within the same tempo. For instance, juxtaposing swing rhythms with straight beats can add a sophisticated layer of complexity. Metric modulation. Utilize metric modulation to shift the perceived tempo without changing the underlying BPM. This can create the illusion of tempo change and add a layer of rhythmic intricacy. 6. Complex tempo structures in songwriting. Symphonic structure. Employ tempo variations akin to symphonic movements. Divide your composition into multiple sections, each with its unique tempo and mood, creating a journey for the listener. Contrapuntal tempo techniques. In compositions with multiple melodic lines, counterpoint, assign different tempos to each line. This technique can be complex but highly rewarding, adding depth and texture to your music. Practical implementation. Example 1. Progressive rock composition. Intro. Start with a slow 80 BPM, establishing a reflective mood. Verse. Transition to 100 BPM, maintaining a steady yet engaging pace. Gradually accelerate to 120 BPM, building anticipation. Hit a peak at 140 BPM for maximum energy. Bridge to 90 BPM with polyrhythmic elements, creating a contrasting interlude. Outro. Return to the original 80 BPM, providing a cohesive conclusion. Example 2. Electronic dance music, EDM. Build up. Begin at 110 BPM with minimal instrumentation. Drop, sudden shift to 128 BPM with full instrumentation, delivering impact. Breakdown. Drop back to 115 BPM using atmospheric elements to create a tension release effect. Final drop. Accelerate back to 128 BPM, maximizing danceability and energy.